genre.
Hello, and welcome back to the Doctor's Companion presents Doctor Who, The Long Way Round, the weekly podcast where we review and discuss every episode of Doctor Who, one doctor at a time. I'm Nick Jimenez.
I'm Scott Corelli.
And I'm Cass Fredrickson.
Today on the show, we'll be discussing The Reign of Terror, the first Doctor's 9th story.
So The Reign of Terror... let's see. So we have 2 missing episodes, though they have both been animated. So that's a plus, and I think a first for us on the show of actually like having the animated one available to us at the time of recording.
Well animated too, I thought.
Yeah. Kind of reminded me of something, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It's a little archery.
Reminded me of Archer for sure.
Yeah, a little archery because it has like a CG quality to it.
It kind of reminded me of did either of you ever play LA Noire?
Sure.
No.
You know how like it was like a Depression era, like 1930s LA detective game where you would like go out to like the country and like interrogate like a guy in the country to see like, did you see anybody driving out late at night? And he'd be like, no. And then he would make like a weird like doubtful face, and the game would be like, do you trust him?
Yeah.
And you'd be like, no, I guess not.
Rockstar was like, well, I guess we won't ever try anything new ever again.
That's true.
After that.
Oh boy. But there were close-ups of characters being shifty, and it reminded me of LA Noire.
Yeah. There was a lot of close-ups. Like it's the thing that I find interesting about these animations is like sometimes they try to recreate the feel of the original show of like what it looked like, you know, if you were watching it in live action. And then other times here, they're like, let's pace this thing up. And it's just like cut. And it's like, I don't think this is what it looked like when it was airing.
It low-key made me anxious because they would cut to a close-up of someone like sitting down or like picking up a mug. And I'm like, oh no, is it poison?
Is that important?
What?
Yeah, absolutely. So The Reign of Terror, this is the season finale of season 1 of Doctor Who. And when they were shooting it, they were not sure if they were going to get renewed, which is a crazy thing to think about. Of like, there was a time where Doctor Who was like, I don't know, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the end of Doctor Who. It's just this season of the show.
It's kind of a grand tradition of the show, though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, but like this early on, you know, it just would be crazy to be like, oh yeah, there was like that weird like children's show in 1963, you know, that lasted 1 season. It'd just be so weird. Yeah, so they weren't sure if they were going to get renewed, and as a result, their contract with their normal studio home, the sort of like rundown studio home that we saw in An Adventure in Space and Time, that like junky place that had like leaks and stuff. Their contract with that ran out, so they had to bring in another production into that studio. So they were floating during the production of this, where they were like sort of going between a bunch of studios, trying to find a new home for the show were it to continue. And the first studio that they went to for the first few episodes was this weirdly shaped, like narrow studio space that didn't really work for the type of show that they were, where you need to have like, alien planets and stuff like that. If you watch like the early episodes, it is like all very narrow alleyways, and like, when they're out in the country at the beginning, it's just like trees right directly in front of like a wall that is like a backlot, like a background, so it's all very narrow. All the stuff in the country kind of reminded me of like watching South Park or something, because it's just so like there's no depth to anything,
Right.
And yeah, it's because they shot in this like really narrow studio space, and then they moved to a different studio space for the like for episodes 3 and 4, and then yet another studio space for episodes 5 and 6. The actor who played Ian pre-recorded his 2 scenes in episodes 2 and 3, so he could be the last of the actors to take a vacation. So he got 2 weeks off right at the tail end of the show, which is very silly. But
later, losers.
Yeah. And he had to come back for like 3 weeks, and then the show was on hiatus. But yeah, so while they were shooting this, they weren't sure if the show was going to end or if they were going to be able to keep going. And eventually, while they were shooting like episode 5, they finally got the renewal for another 13 episodes, with an option for 13 after that. And so the show would go on. But it is interesting because, as we'll talk about next week when we talk about episode 6, it does end in a way that feels like, and the adventure continues. Thanks for watching, and it's like, oh, I guess if it ended here, I guess that's just how it would end. It's like, and Dr. Samuel L. Beckett never left back home.
Barbary and Ian never returned back to Earth.
Yeah, right. Exactly. They just kept on, doing adventures. The writer of this episode, who was Dennis Spooner, he was a friend of Terry Nation, creator of the Daleks. And Terry Nation was like, you got to get this guy to write Doctor Who. This guy, there is no one who writes better science fiction than this guy. And the the producer, the story editor at the time, Whitaker, was like, oh, okay, great. Hey, so I need you to write a historical. And this guy was like, what? I write science fiction. Yeah, why are you making me write a historical? And so they made him, he was like, here's a list of historicals that we want, of like time periods that we would like a story set in. And so he chose the French Revolution, and wrote the story. That's kind of it. There's not like, not like a ton of like fun behind the scenes stuff with this one. I will say there is a bit about the director shifting at the last minute. And they brought in a director who is fresh out of like BBC directing school, a man named Henrik Hirsch, and he was a foreigner, and William Hartnell did not like him very much, because William Hartnell apparently had issues with foreigners. I don't know. He was an old man in the early 60s, so...
Huh.
I don't know. I don't even know. I'm not even entirely sure what kind of foreigner that Henrik Hirsch was. With a name like that, it seems like he was German. So that might be what his issue was, William Hartnell's issue. He was probably a World War II vet. And
right.
didn't like the Germans very much.
Yeah, the crew would see William Hartnell start to assume an old-timey boxer stance, and they'd have to like call cut.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you're far off, to be perfectly honest. But Verity Lambert had to like, so basically the stress of the star of the show giving him the cold shoulder and not taking any of his direction, and just being kind of a dick to him, plus the workload of Doctor Who was very like way higher than any other show that he had directed up to this point. And so he actually, in episode 3, he collapsed while directing an episode, and
God.
was taken to the hospital. Somebody else had to finish directing episode 3. They can't get confirmation on who did that, because I think it was just like literally just some crew member that they could find. But someone else finished episode 3, and then he came back for episodes 4, 5, and 6. But and then after that, Verity Lambert like basically like went up to William Hartnell, was like, "Can you knock it off? Like, stop giving him such a hard time." And so William Hartnell was like, he softened to him after that.
So post he collapsed. He came back from collapsing, and William Hartnell was still being unprofessional. And at that point, Verity Lambert was like, "Dude,
yeah, right."
That's
oh my God.
crazy.
Yeah. I just imagine. I can imagine that, like, a World War II vet wouldn't take too kindly to Germans. But it's too bad, because this poor guy, I think he was like fairly young too. Just coming out of the BBC TV directing school. He had only directed like 2 other things before this. So he's pretty fresh, and like this old guy is just like, "You stupid German," and it's just like, that sucks.
That's awful.
Yeah. So anyway,
it's neither here nor there. But do either of you know in what capacity William Hartnell served during the war?
I'm not even Google machine.
I don't know.
It's just because he would have already been well into adulthood even at World War II start.
He joined the British Army, but had a nervous breakdown, and that resulted in his discharge less than a year later.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's I get it's perspective that, like, history like that kind of goes into people's lifetimes,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Geez Louise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that stuff, like the bigotry thing, like it I don't like it, but that's what happens when you train all your soldiers to hate a type of person, and only kill that type of person because you're at war.
Right.
It's not like that brainwashing just goes away after the war, So it's understandable, even if I don't like it. But anyway.
Do you know if this director would ever return to Doctor Who during the Troughton years, or was this his only time directing the show?
I think this is his only time directing the show.
Understandable.
I don't think he only directed this. He never came back.
Oh, the director is Hungarian.
Hungarian. Okay.
Yes.
Like Bela Lugosi.
Hungarian immigrant. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the only one that he did.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, in any event. Okay, so The Reign of Terror. This is considered like one of the best episodes of the First Doctor's run, or best stories of the First Doctor's run. And so much so that it's actually, there's like a scene in Adventure in Space and Time where the Doctor is portrayed like wearing his little outfit that he gets in this story. So they're like in the midst of filming this episode in a scene in that, in An Adventure in Space and Time. So yeah, it's a pretty iconic story. And I am curious what you guys think of it. Nick, I know this is your first time watching it, so what were your thoughts?
I had a great time.
Yeah.
I was really impressed by this. The episode is called Reign of Terror.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a really big fan of, I just loved the tension and dread and paranoia that these characters go through and how it affects the team in different ways. And this was the first time I really saw like meaningful conversations between the companions and the doctor about like how the adventure was affecting their like worldview and making decisions. And I was really engaged by the French Revolution drama and the espionage. And so, yeah, I was really riveted by it. Even, and hats off to the reanimators.
Yeah. Cass, do you consider this a classic of the First Doctor's era?
No. I actually was surprised by how little I liked this time around. And maybe like I didn't actually care for the animation. The way that the eyes were like CG kind of freaked me out.
The way they would dart around.
Yeah. There was something about like the style of it that I was just like, that's weird and creepy, and I'm not a fan of it. But I do appreciate that the animation exists, because the last time I watched this, it was like, the slideshow like reconstruction thing with the like garbled audio. I like parts of this, but overall I was kind of bored.
I can
and
yeah.
Oh, what were you going to say?
I was going to say like, I could see being bored by this because it is a lot of like just like moving pieces around.
The French Revolution as like a topic doesn't really interest me all that much, so I'm just like, oh, look at these assholes being terrible to each other.
Is this the same? Is this like Les Miserables? Is this like the same? Is that the
I think
same?
this is after.
Okay.
This is the Reign of Terror took place during the 1790s.
Right.
So from our perspective, America, that's about 20 years post like the American Revolution.
When does Les Miserables take place?
I think it's like a couple decades before. I'm going to look up when Les Miserables.
Right.
Okay.
I'm no historian, as any listener to the Pirates of the Caribbean season of franchisography will tell you.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
I would.
What about you, Scott?
I agree with you, Cass. I was not into this time. Yeah, I wasn't into it. If I heard one more person say citizen, I might have jumped off a bridge. I just.
Oh, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
You sparked something that now makes sense, because I remember they constantly refer to each other as citizen, and it felt very dystopian sci-fi.
Yes.
And so now knowing that this was written by someone who was really good at writing sci-fi, that kind of like clicked in a weird way.
Oh, true. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. I found it mostly irritating. I think Susan might be at her absolute worst in this story. She is just terrible. And yeah, I don't know. It's my favorite parts of this are the Doctor outsmarting Frenchmen. Outside of those are all the best scenes. Outside of those scenes, I think everything else is a wash. Like, I'm just kind of bored. But I love the Doctor, like outsmarting like everyone that he comes into contact with, he's a
little chaos goose.
Yeah, like an old folk tale, like a
he's just ambling down the road, outsmarting people and bopping them on the head.
Yeah. So I like everything with the Doctor in this is great. Everything else I think kind of sucks, but I don't know. I think Cass, we're in the minority on that, because people seem to really love this story.
I remember liking it a lot more the first time, but that was like 10 years ago now or something like that. So I don't know.
Right.
So three things that I want to say to what add to what Scott said, or to what we've been talking about. A, Les Miserables, the novel, was first published in 1862. So that's sometime after, but I don't know. But it is set in the past. I'm trying to figure out when the story takes place. It starts, like, literally the novel starts in, like, 1812, but it's Les Mis, so it, like, or not 1812. Whatever. 1815. Oh, yeah, so I think it is after most of this. Yeah, this is just like what franchisography is like.
1832 is Les Mis.
So it's after this.
Yes.
Great.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Right. I don't think Carol. I don't think Susan is in this enough or does this enough to be terrible. She's kind of just like unconscious for a lot of it.
We'll talk about it. I've got plenty to complain about. But let's.
She's either sick on a couch or in prison.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
You seem to not think that this is a bad thing. I'm telling you that I think this sucks.
I think our miscommunication is like, the character of Susan isn't being terrible. Her arc in this episode is terrible. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, that's the same thing because she's a fictional character, but yes.
Okay, well, I thought you meant like she was
I don't
being
think the actress is being bad. I think that the character sucks.
Well, like when a character is making bad decisions, that's what I thought you meant by being terrible.
Oh, I see. Well, I don't know. We'll get into it.
Okay.
I don't want to get into it now because we're not talking about an individual episode, but let's do that. Let's get into episode 1. The Reign of Terror, Part 1, A Land of Fear. Written by Dennis Spooner, directed by Henrik Hirsch, produced by Verity Lambert, air date 8th of August, 1964. The Doctor and Susan attempt to bring Ian and Barbara back home to 1960s England, but upon leaving the TARDIS, they learn from a young boy in the woods that they're actually in France. The foursome continue to explore and eventually discover an abandoned house where they find 18th century furniture and clothes, as well as papers bearing the signature of Robespierre, chief orchestrator of government during the Reign of Terror, leading them to believe they are actually in the year 1794. They deduce the farmhouse is being used as a staging post and an escape chain for counter-revolutionaries. While the Doctor is searching upstairs, the others are accosted by 2 counter-revolutionaries who demand to know which side of the revolution they are on. Suddenly, a band of pro-revolutionary soldiers, surround the house and demand their collective surrender. The 2 counter-revolutionaries give themselves up, thinking their surrender will spare them the guillotine, but they are both killed. Thinking they are also counter-revolutionaries, the pro-revolutionary soldiers capture Ian, Barbara, and Susan and set fire to the farmhouse, unaware the Doctor is inside. The travelers stare at the house as the roof falls in and the Doctor lies unconscious on the floor. So, our last season of Long Way Around was so long ago that I forgot that the last story ended with Ian and Barbara being like, well, I think it's about time to hit the dusty trail, and move on. I'd forgotten that they were like ready to leave.
What even was the last one?
I
guess I could.
I don't have that. I don't have that handy.
Okay.
Oh, it's the censor rights.
Oh, the aliens in the PJs. Okay, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember now.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
They were trying to get into the ship.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They were trapped outside in a hallway for like a few minutes, and it's all coming back to me.
So Ian and Barbara want to go home. Susan's really upset about it. The Doctor's really upset about it. But he's like, fine, I'll take you home. Here, you're home. Get out. And they're like,
I don't know. It doesn't look like home.
I don't know if we should trust you. I think you should probably just come with us to make sure, which is pretty funny. I just love their little asides, like Ian and Barbara's asides.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about Ian and Barbara that I find so funny, where they're just like, I mean, we're obviously smarter than this guy.
Like this guy's crazy.
This guy's crazy and his stupid little granddaughter.
They have a weird it's us against them.
Yes,
it's a weird dynamic.
It is a very weird dynamic.
And then with the doctor, it seems kind of like, oh, well, why would you want to leave? Come on, stay. And Susan is just blissfully unaware of any tension and is just confused as to why they would even want to leave.
Right. So they land in a farm, and I love that this random kid runs past and they just grab him and hold him, and then he just kicks one of them and runs away. And I was like, why is he so afraid of us? I was like, because you grabbed a random child.
Like a little like a street urchin.
Yeah.
Like Les Mis, he reminded me a lot of Gavroche, the little kid in Les Mis.
Yeah, and his name is Jean-Pierre, which we find out in the next episode. But that's just they weren't even trying when they thought of a French name for some random child. I don't know, Jean-Pierre, whatever.
Maybe he gave them a fake name.
Oh, maybe he gave them the equivalent of the French equivalent of John Smith. He tells them that they're 10 kilometers away from Paris, and the doctor's like, see, did pretty good, right? All
close.
Things considered, that's pretty close to a major city. They're like, yeah, great, except that kid looks like he's from the 18th century. Oh, man.
There's a great moment where right before they set off, the doctor's standing and he says, well, we're going to stand here talking all night? And then he just gets to walking.
Yeah.
He's really sassy in this one.
He is. They find a farm and realize that they are in the midst of the French Revolution, to which Susan says, that's my grandfather's favorite period in all of human history. Which makes me wonder, is that the doctor's favorite period, or does each regeneration have a new favorite period of human history?
According to the TARDIS wiki, among the influences that this episode has is when Moffat and Russell T Davies influenced this during The Woman and the Girl in the Fireplace, with how enthusiastic he is about French history and stuff.
Yeah, right.
That's cool.
Huh. Interesting. That's fun. So he loves the French Revolution. The doctor just loves people getting decapitated. It's his favorite thing.
Who knows how many times he's gone back in time to watch one.
Yeah. Line them up and chop them off. That's what I say.
Oh my God.
There's the old man again.
He's always here with a smile on his face.
Sometimes he's got a child with him, and I say it's a shame.
So then there's some rebels that are in this house, and they find out that they're basically in a safe house. They've stumbled upon one, and then soldiers attack and set it on fire. The doctor falls through. He falls through a hole, right, and gets knocked unconscious, and then he's in in the house while it's on fire.
One of the soldiers knocks him on the back of the head.
Oh, knocks him on the back
upstairs.
of the head. That's okay. Yeah,
because they don't know who he is.
Which is probably why he just knocks people on the back of the head the whole rest of the episode. Because it happened once, and he's like, "That's a great idea." Okay,
I should be doing that all the time.
Yeah,
there's a few times that I'm surprised he doesn't kill somebody when he does that.
We'll get to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So of the two rebels, there's a brave one and more of an anxious, freaky out one. And when the brave one is the first one to get shot, that was my oh, whoa, it's usually the shifty guy in these kinds of stories.
Mm-hmm.
And is that the guy that Ian meets later on that had been shot, or is that a different guy?
No, that's a different guy.
Yes.
Okay, it's different. I have trouble keeping track because they all look the same to me in this.
No, because the guy that Ian meets was from England, and the guy that got shot in this episode was like very French.
Oh, okay.
The one that gets shot is a friend of the people that Barbara meets later.
Yes.
So there are soldiers. They're all really mean French
Mhm.
soldiers, and they kidnap everybody, take them prisoner, and then like set the house on fire. And the doctor's in there, and he's like yelling, "Hey, the house is on fire! I'm in here." So,
But the little boy sees all of this happening from the bushes.
Well, that's now. So, like, I guess that takes us to episode 2. The Reign of Terror, Part 2. Guests of Madame Guillotine. Written by Dennis Spooner, directed by Henrik Hirsch, produced by Verity Lambert. Air date 15th of August, 1964. Barbara, Ian, and Susan are taken to Paris and sentenced to death for being traitors to the revolution. They are swiftly imprisoned, where the warden in charge tries to make a deal to help the two girls escape, but Barbara doesn't trust him and turns down his offer. Barbara finds water damage to the wall of their cell and surmises that it may be soft enough that she and Susan might be able to dig out a brick from the wall to escape. But when rats begin to infest their cell through the hole in the wall, they decide to stop their escape plan. In another cell, Ian is sharing space with a dying man named Webster. Webster tells Ian that he has been sent over from England to find a man named James Stirling with information that will help England win the war with France. Webster makes Ian promise to seek out Stirling and then dies. Later, a nobleman named Lemaitre comes to inspect the body of Webster and orders Ian to tell him whether Webster said anything to him before he died. Ian says no, but the jailer overheard them talking, so Lemaitre takes Ian's name off of the execution list. Meanwhile, the doctor is saved from the fire by the young boy from the woods who informs him that his companions have been taken to the Conciergerie prison in Paris. On the way there, the doctor encounters the leader of a chain gang who forces the doctor to join in the manual work. The doctor creates and executes a plan involving fake treasure that results in the greedy leader getting hit in the back of the head while attempting to uncover it, allowing the doctor to escape and continue on toward Paris. However, it may be too late as the jailer comes to Barbara and Susan's cell and informs them that it is time for their execution. As they are led out to the wagon that will take them to their death, Ian looks out his prison window in shock. He saves the doctor, Jean-Pierre, the little boy. And I just love that as soon as he saves the doctor has no time for this kid. He's like, all right, thank you. See you later.
Please, no.
Like, I shouldn't go with you because I'm the man of the house now. And he's like, oh, yes, right, of course, man of the house. All right, anyway, see you later.
It's really funny to watch because I do one of the key characteristics I attribute to the doctor is empathy. And so that his first incarnation kind of just brushes people off or knocks them unconscious and just leaves them forever.
Oh my!
I like it.
There's this bit where the doctor he's just like, well, I'll be on my way. And then he just like starts a montage of just like walking through the countryside to Paris. And all of that on location shooting, that is someone doing an impression of William Hartnell. That is not William Hartnell walking, because they were like, he's shooting the Sensorites. We don't have time to do this location shoot with him. So somebody went and like watched him walk around set while filming the Sensorites, and then just did an impression of him for these.
It's really good.
Production show. Yeah, it is.
He nails it.
Yeah, you did a good job. I never once didn't think it wasn't William Hartnell. So
yeah.
It
reminded me of the grandfather, Uncle Waldo, in the Aristocats. How they would just like walk down the road and he had kind of like that little shot.
Yeah.
It's a long walk too.
Yes.
Meanwhile, you got Barbara, Ian, and Susan all finding out that they're going to be executed via guillotine. Which was the style at the time.
Guests of Madame Guillotine, they called it.
Yes. And so they're relatively upset about that. The doctor runs into a chain gang and is forced to work a farm. And then we get this great sequence where he outsmarts this guy, but he's like, "Hey, look over there!" Steals the money, throws the money in the dirt, and is like, "Hey, I found money!" And then bashes him over the head.
So but the way that it's shot, listener, is, you know, the guy, the prison guard, is like looking at where the coin is. The doctor raises like a shovel. The camera pans to one of the other prisoners, and then you hear, and I want to be clear with my words, you hear like a thunk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You hear like you don't hear a bonk, or you hear like a really ugly like plunking sound. And then the actor, the prisoner, like squints, he grimaces in disgust. And so my brain was like, oh, the doctor just like caved that guy's skull in.
Yeah. That's definitely how it's shot. And then, like, at the end of the scene, you see him and he's just snoring. And you're like,
he's literally snoring.
Yeah. You're like, oh, okay. He didn't murder him. Though it did.
It's a kid's show.
Very
For
much.
sure.
I mean, lots of people get murked in this episode, though.
Yes, they do. They get shot.
Yeah.
In the name of revolution, Scott.
Yeah.
Or France.
My
It would have been awesome if he had
about-
said "for France" when he bashed it.
My favorite thing about this situation that the doctor finds himself in is that it's his fault to begin with, because he like stops
100%.
to rest, and then he like insults the guy that's like making these prisoners work, and the guy's just like, "Hey, well, you got any money? No? Okay, you can't pay your taxes. You gotta work too." Like, he was just gonna let the doctor go, but the doctor was just like, "Hey, why don't you like get off your ass and help these people?" And he's just like, "No." So, like, he insults him and then has to do labor and then like almost kills a guy to get out of it.
And then just keeps on walking.
Yeah.
5 miles to Paris, the sign says.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really like silly sequence, but it sort of paints a larger problem with this story for me, for the pacing of it, which is just like, this story has no business being 6 episodes, and this is exactly why. Like, we just have this cutaway of him dealing with this situation that never like comes back around through the rest of the story, right? It's not like, you know, he runs into this chain gang leader again, or any of the other prisoners that he helped release, or any of that, right? None of these guys come back. So it's just like, we need to give him something to do in this episode so that he doesn't get to Paris until the end of it.
Right.
And that's it's just, you're just stretching the story out for no reason. It just feels very artificial to me. But that's not to say that this wasn't a fun watch. That
you know
section.
what, I'm just now, you know, I watched this over the course of 2 nights.
Yeah.
So I watched 1 through 3 at night, and then this morning I watched 4, 5, 6. And I was riveted by 4, 5, and 6 a lot more than 1, 2, and 3. And I remember feeling a lot of the thoughts or thinking a lot of the things that y'all two were talking about, which is, I was a little bit bored and disengaged. I wasn't really moved by or riveted by the characters yet. And then maybe it was just the difference between like it being the morning and having my tea or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, wait a second. So-and-so betrayed so-and-so. What will this mean for France?
Oh man. Yeah. And then Susan and Barbara are taken to the guillotine. I mean, that's
an important character we meet in this episode, I would say plot-wise, is the jailer.
Sure. Yeah. He reminds me of like a Princess Bride character. Like, he's just very silly, this guy.
Yeah.
He's a doofus. Very gullible.
Yeah, he's very much just like tossed between the sides as a patsy, just whoever can bribe him next.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
So I looked up the writer of this, Dennis Spooner, because I wanted to know if if he wrote any other stories, because after like being made to write a historical. So I think it's funny that one of the other stories that he does write in Doctor Who for the first Doctor is The Romans, which is another historical. But that one is it's like a comedy. So like there are a lot of characters that are like the jailer in The Romans. I like The Romans a lot more than this story. So I think it's like it's kind of interesting to me, like where he kind of like maybe he's like, oh, I like that jailer guy. Maybe I'll just bring him back, or not him, but some like a character with that same kind of temperament. Yeah.
That's interesting. Oh, and also something just to bring up, like just for the aid of our conversation later, something that happens in this one is Ian is in his jail cell. He meets the British guy that's been living in France aiding the revolution. And right before he dies, he tells Ian to find James Stirling.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Another Englishman who's been living in Paris.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. You're right. That is important.
But then it ends with Ian like seeing the girls like carted away to the guillotine.
Right. Which is interesting because the cart that they're put in, they do not have like chains. They're not in chains. They're just put in the back of like the equivalent of a pickup truck, and they're just like, stay here.
We find out later that Susan is sick, but my first note for this episode is it looked like Susan was taking a nap on the way to the guillotine.
Yes.
Because she's just kind of like kneeling on a post.
Yes. The Reign of Terror, Part 3, A Change of Identity. Written by Dennis Spooner, directed by John Gorey, produced by Verity Lambert, air date 22nd of August, 1964. The wagon carrying Susan and Barbara halts temporarily to change horses. Barbara suggests that they could use this opportunity to run, but Susan has too much of a headache to escape getting their heads cut off. Luckily for them, their transport is hijacked by two counter-revolutionaries named Jules and Jean, who kill the guards and escape with Susan and Barbara back to their safe house. There, Susan and Barbara tell them about the farmhouse being burned down and their cohorts being killed by soldiers. Jean and Jules speculate that there must be a traitor in their midst who is giving away the locations of their safe house. At that exact moment, another counter-revolutionary arrives named Leon Colbert, who is definitely not the spy. Back at the prison, the jailer is called away while serving food to the inmates, and in his rush, leaves his set of keys in the lock to Ian's cell because he's an idiot. While the guard is gone, Ian removes the key to his cell and replaces it in the lock with another key on the ring. When the jailer returns, he thinks he got away with his forgetfulness and then gets drunk. Ian takes this opportunity to sneak out of the prison, unaware that Lemaitre is following him to determine whether Webster had said anything about Stirling to Ian before he died. Meanwhile, the doctor arrives in Paris and visits a clothing shop where he convinces the shopkeeper to trade all of his clothes, including his ring, for the clothes of a regional officer of the provinces. In his new guise, the doctor forces his way into the prison to help his companions, but is informed by the jailer that all three have gone. The doctor ascertains what has happened to his friends and is about to leave when Lemaitre insists he accompany the doctor to report on his province, and they leave. Just then, the shopkeeper arrives to speak to Lemaitre. He has proof of a traitor and displays the doctor's ring. So, episode 3, we get a few things. The jailer leaves his keys in a cell door. After like feeding people lunch, he like just leaves the keys because he can't get it out fast enough to like go talk to his boss, who's like calling him from the other room. So he like kind of like panics and just like leaves the keys. And Ian takes the keys out, takes the key for his cell off the ring, and then puts the key back in the keyhole. Sneaky Ian. So that's lucky. And then I am curious if he eats his slop or not, but like, did he after that? Did he's like, well, I mean, I'm here, so he just like eats the food too. Yeah, and then we get the thing that really annoys me, which is that so the horse pulling the cart that Susan and Barbara are on throws a shoe, and so they're stuck there, and all of the soldiers are distracted by the horse thing, and so Barbara's like, all right, now's our chance, Susan. Let's run for it so we don't get our heads chopped off. And Susan's like, but I have a backache and a headache, so I can't. I think I'd rather just stay here and get my head chopped off.
So
what?
I agree with your sentiment that this is ultimately like weak, like not the best story, like plot wise.
Yeah.
But like they had been like for some reason trying to just dig their way to freedom for all of episode 2.
Yeah.
And like had been chipping away at raw rock. And there's like a whole scene where they're both like, but both of our hands are so blistered, and they're already like tired. And we find out later she's coming down with like the chills.
Uh-huh.
And so like that's like the plot reason why she doesn't want to leave. But like that's not the strong, that's not the best reason.
Yeah. Unless she's literally unconscious, there is no world in which, I don't care how sick I am, if I'm being taken to the guillotine, I'm gonna run for it, like any chance that I can.
Right?
But she's just like, maybe it's for the best. I don't know. I'm pretty sick.
I'm tired, Susan.
I'm tired.
I know I don't look it, but...
And then the worst is that Barbara is just like, yeah, you're right. Okay, we'll just stay. And I'm like, what? Throw her over your shoulder and run. What are you doing?
Yeah, because Barbara carried her in the previous episode, like lifted her off of the floor, like 2 feet up in the air. Barbara is swole. She could have.
Yeah. This is so silly.
She also lifts Susan up for her to like check out the window in her cell.
Yeah.
There's also another prisoner in the back of the horse-drawn pickup truck with them, and he is just watching their exchange of just like, you really, like he's just looking like, really, you're not gonna run for it? I'm gonna run for it if you don't run for it. Like he just has this look on his face like, why are you guys even talking about this? Get out of here. Let's go. It's good. So they end up being saved by 2 rebels who like kill the soldiers after the horse is taken away, which is so funny. They have this cart, and then the cart is just like left there in the middle of the road because the horse threw a shoe. The horse is taken away, and then presumably someone else is going to eventually bring them another horse so they can continue on their way to the guillotine. But it's just like, this is a lot of rigmarole. I mean, you could just walk, like just put guns in their backs and force them to walk to the guillotine. I don't understand why we have to have this whole cart situation. Feels like a lot of extra steps to me. I don't know. Like, is it in a neighboring town? Like, why? I don't.
No,
I just
they're
don't
in
understand.
Paris.
Yeah. So, like, what is the cart situation?
I don't know.
Why do we? This is so silly. Anyway,
like, would they be worried about exhausting them?
What does that matter? Their heads are going to be chopped off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time? Is it a timing thing? Well, we have like 8 a day.
Yeah. We really need to keep their blood pressure down because we don't want blood to spray all over the audience. So,
Well, there were like 3. There were like hundreds happening when all was said and done. So yeah, I'd say maybe there were just like, it was a screen time issue where it's like we need to have like the next batch ready to go.
Yeah. Meanwhile, back at the jail,
yes,
Ian uses his secret key and escapes and fights the jailer, and then gets out of there.
That's true. He hits the jailer.
Yeah.
Until the jailer is unconscious.
Yeah. Yeah. Ian doesn't pull his punches.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. And then meanwhile, the doctor has arrived in Paris. He goes to a shop And he's like, I need new clothes. I need new kicks. And he doesn't have any money, so he's going to trade his current outfit, including his ring, for a new outfit that this guy just happens to have like fancy clothes that are like also double as credentials for like, it's like a uniform or something.
Cass, this felt very much like an RPG move.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to roll bluff. Oh, 20. Oh, nice. Like,
I have an outfit that would get you into the prison right here.
so yeah,
Oh,
he
man.
like barters for a new outfit and like a medal that like places him as like a regional government body, and he also gets like parchment, so he like forges his paper and then it's just like walking around in this stupid feathered hat. Ugh.
I really hope 14 I want a doctor who disguises themselves again
Yeah.
and like creates characters besides like the psychic paper, but really puts effort into it.
I would like that. Yeah, that would be
I had a continuity question for both of you, because the idea that he is bartering his clothes and maybe doesn't get them back, and like I have like questions like, does he get his old clothes back, and or does he have like a new outfit in season 2? Because do they do the continuity of like, oh yeah, he traded his outfit, he needs to get new clothes?
I don't remember.
I'm pulling up Planet of the Giants right now, which is
because I would be
next
impressed
story.
if they did that much continuity.
No, it appears that he's just wearing his regular outfit again. Well, he's wearing a cape now.
He went back. Oh, cool. Oh, the cape. Yeah,
he's got a cape.
I've seen pictures of the cape. I like that he went back and punched a hole in the door and like opened it and went back and stole his clothes.
Yeah, it appears that he's wearing a cape. It does seem like he's wearing a similar outfit, but it is different. It is not exactly the same. But it's the same style. So,
actually, because of the plot, I could see why he would get his clothes back. Actually, because
interesting.
I know we're not talking about it yet, but the guy that helps them out at the end ends up with the clothes.
Right.
So.
Oh, cool. Right. Yeah. Well, in any event, he does wear a cape.
Yeah, the cape
Planet
is
of the Giants.
sick.
Do either of you know the significance of the ring? Did we know what the ring is yet?
I think it's just a ring that he has.
Yeah.
I just feel like now that would be retconned into like, oh, that has like the Gallifreyan codex.
Right?
And
I'm sure it does.
Cool.
So the rebels realize that they're like, they're like asking like they're asking Barbara like, where did you guys come from? And she's like, oh, I came from this farmhouse here on this map. And they're like, that's our safe house. If the soldiers found you at that safe house, that means we have a traitor who's telling them like the locations of our safe houses. So that sucks. We got to get to the bottom of that.
There's a
so that's going on, and then the doctor goes to the jail as his in his new regional officer.
A great
persona.
reveal.
Yeah,
I gasped.
He's got like a Dracula medallion.
It's almost like it's meant to intimidate the jailer, like, well, this guy has to be important. Look.
Yeah. And so that's fun. And then the shopkeeper meets up with what is this guy's name? I know what his real name is, but like what's his fake name?
It annoyed me because they called him Citizen more than anything, so my brain
Lemaitre?
remembered him as Citizen. Yeah, I think you're right.
Lemaitre?
Lemaitre.
Yeah,
I think so.
Okay, so Lemaitre comes,
mm-hmm.
and who is like another like kind of important somebody. And the shopkeeper is like, hey, I need to talk to like whoever's in charge. So Lemaitre goes and talks to him, and he's like, I have to tell you that you have a traitor in your midst, and I have the proof. And he shows him the ring. The ring, however, is not proof of him being a traitor. It's just proof that he has spoken to someone that he thinks is a traitor, I guess.
Yeah. I really like this. I liked this as an episode out because it was like, oh, that dude was clocked the doctor from the get-go.
Mm.
Right.
He's like, this dude's full of crap. He wanted to buy, he's going to forge it. He asked for pen and parchment. Clothes that would get him into government places, you know, and it kind of, it builds, it fleshes the world of this like historical drama, like espionage out where like, you can't trust anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is so doubtful and suspicious of everyone that they encounter. And then the story constantly gives us reasons to reinforce why they're completely rational for being that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all the guillotining, you know,
yeah.
Like any kind of like, oh, you knew something and didn't tell somebody, guillotined.
Or, you know, or
you
even
didn't
like
know something, but told somebody, guillotined. Like, it's just like every little thing. So
as funny as it is, even the chain gang encounter is an example of really quickly the doctor goes from being able to chum around with this guy to literally being held captive and denied freedom in like the blink of an eye. And like, yeah, this is the world where alliances are constantly like shifting around and nobody can trust anybody.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think I like talking about this story more than I liked watching it.
That's fair.
So, yeah.
I can empathize with like with either of you like not being super engaged by like a bunch of similar looking sounding characters standing in a room together.
Yeah.
The thing that you said earlier about the studio being narrow, though, like makes so much sense because, like, there's that scene in episode 1 where Ian and Barbara are talking, and they're like 2 inches away from each other's faces, like, and they're just like having a conversation, and I'm just like, why are they standing so close?
Yeah, it's a sexual tension, Cass.
Well, no, and then like the guy who's dying in the jail cell with Ian is just like he like grabs him, and he's like even closer, and I'm just like, what is happening?
Sexual tension, Cass.
Another really tight corridor moment was the guy whose name we just learned and then I forgot it. He sees Lemaitre. He sees Ian leave the prison. He goes, "We shall see if you're delivering a message to James Stirling. We shall see." And he's like standing next to a wall. Like, you can kind of see like the edge, like right by his nose.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Very weird, odd shaped building for a studio, to place a studio inside.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna film things here. We're gonna build sets in this narrow hallway. Very strange. The Reign of Terror, Part 4, The Tyrant of France, written by Dennis Spooner, directed by Henrik Hirsch, produced by Verity Lambert, air date 29th of August, 1964. Lemaitre takes the doctor to Robespierre, who is a total psycho and constantly talks about increasing the pace of execution. Little the doctor can say to the contrary seems to have any sway, but by the end of the meeting, he seems to respect the doctor in his own way and asks him to return to hang out tomorrow. The doctor and Lemaitre return to jail, where the doctor tries to make excuses and leave, but is eventually forced into staying. Lemaitre returns to his quarters to find the shopkeeper there, who informs him that the doctor is a fraud. Back at the Rubble House, Susan is still unwell, so Leon takes it upon himself to find a physician for her. On their arriving at the physician's, he seems suspicious but willing to treat Susan. He leaves to get some supplies, and when a suspicious Susan tries to leave, they discover that they have been locked in the room. The physician is a spy and has informed the soldiers of Barbara and Susan's whereabouts. Before they know what has happened, they have been rearrested and taken back to prison. Knowing full well the connections between his guests, Lemaitre summons the doctor to interrogate Barbara, only to eavesdrop on their conversation. Meanwhile, Jules and Jean are checking out one of their hideouts and are shocked to see someone there. They attack him only to discover that it's actually Ian, who says that he was told to wait there for Jules in order to find the whereabouts of James Stirling. Jules has no idea who that is, but believes Leon may know and arranges Ian to meet him in an abandoned church. Upon arriving, however, Ian is surrounded by soldiers as Leon tells him he's walked right into a trap.
Not a lot happens in episode 4, right? Like,
Not really. We meet Robespierre,
right.
who is an absolute maniac, who is
Yes.
like a evil capitalist. If capitalism, instead of taking advantage of the underclass, just executed people via guillotine. So he just is like, no, the problem with society today is we're not executing enough people. Like, this guy is a maniac.
He reminded me of like the Queen of Hearts and Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because his whole thing is like, we need to raise the amount of executions that we're capable of doing daily. We need to automate this. We gotta make it faster. It's literally, he's just like a capitalist, like at a factory where he's like, we have to replace all of these humans with robots so that all of this moves faster. But he's talking about executing people instead of creating product. It's
very much like
nuts.
He's like isolated. He's in his gilded room by himself, and he's just so paranoid and just hears whispers of revolution from every corner. And so he's just like, it's easier if just everyone is guillotined.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's pretty crazy. So this is also, we get like an extended scene in this where the shopkeeper is tattling on the doctor.
Right.
To Lemaitre.
Takes a bribe.
Right. So there, you got that going on. Ian and Barbara are reunited after Ian gets back from vacation. But yeah, they like find him in the safe house and they like attack him, Barbara's new friends. And then Barbara's like,
they knock him out.
Yeah, this is Ian. This is the guy I was telling you about. They're like, oh, well, we'll pop some champagne then. Sorry about the bump on your noggin. And Ian's like, no problem, friends.
Oh, because Ian was asking about one of the rebels by name because of the guy that he met in prison. That was like, get this message to this guy, to Stirling, and you can find him via this guy who Barbara.
Yeah, he's like, there's a guy you got to talk to. I think that was Jean Leon, who was like, this guy will totally know who James Stirling is because he knows who everyone is, and he's the guy he's one of the two guys that rescued Susan and Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Susan, I don't think this is when she really like is absent for. I think she might not even be in this story. They'll like Barbara like, oh yeah, she's upstairs, or she's still sleeping, or she's sick.
Well,
and
they take her to that doctor, and she's in that scene. But yeah, she's not in most of it.
Okay, is the physician scene in this episode?
Yeah, the physician scene is in this episode.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where the physician is a spy, and is like says like, oh yeah, so do you know what's wrong with her? Oh yeah, she just needs to have some bloodletting going on. I'm gonna go get some leeches, and we'll take care of that lickety split. And they're just like, what the fuck? What are you talking about?
And then the doctor totally locks them in, and they're like, oh well, crap. Okay.
Yeah. Oh man.
I like the this is when we get the dialogue between. I think this is the episode where we get the dialogue between Ian and the Jean Leon, where it's like, I don't know who James Stirling is, and he goes, oh, like okay, I don't know why I assumed you would, but you.
Probably because the dying man told me your name, but
Yeah.
Is Leon's the guy that was hitting on Barbara in the last episode, and he's like, then there's like I think the one that Ian is talking to is Jules, and then there's a random one named Jean.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Not to
But
be
I guess
confused
we-
with Jean-Pierre, the little boy. Who
right,
hit the dog.
right. Good old Jean-Pierre.
Hope he's okay.
Yeah.
What's the doctor doing during this episode?
I feel like he's
the
just puttering
doctor-
around.
He goes back and forth from the jail a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
He gets questioned.
He's laying the groundwork.
Yeah. He gets questioned and then he is this the one where he bops the guy on the back of the head? I don't
I made a note here that there were at least 2 times in this episode where I thought the jailer had been murdered, but he was just passed out from drinking.
Yes. Oh, no, the doctor goes with Lemaitre to speak to Robespierre, and then he insults Robespierre, and then it feeds into his paranoia, and then he takes him back to the jail.
Right.
And he's like, "Well, I want to question you tomorrow, so you have to stay here." And that's what he's doing.
Yeah. But also Robespierre kind of loves the doctor. He's like, "I like your honesty." He's kind of he's like, "I like the cut of your jib. I don't agree with anything that you're saying, but I like that you're saying it."
No guillotine today.
Yeah, that's a very weird opinion of the doctor. He's just really into his honesty. I don't know.
It's like Mank.
Yeah. Because there's a guy in the room who's telling him to shut up. And he's and Robespierre's no, let him talk. He's just looking out for me. He's letting me know of the things that I should be aware of. And I'm just wow.
He's not like the other girls.
Yeah.
He's honest.
And then Ian goes to meet Leon. And then a bunch of soldiers are there to trap Ian.
Yeah. I'm the spy.
Yeah, he's you fell right into my trap. I'm okay. So
yeah.
There
are 2 betrayals in this episode.
2 betrayals. Yes. Simple bloodletting. That's what this episode should have been called. Instead of the Tyrant of France, it should have been called A Simple Bloodletting.
One thing I wanted to ask both of you, because there are large gaps between us watching, going back to this era. Does Susan usually kind of get the brunt of these kind of stories where it feels like Susan's always hey, you're sick, or you have to stay in jail, or you have to stay with Attila the Hun, while the rest of us go out and have an adventure? Or am I misremembering that, do you think?
I feel a lot of the times, they don't really the writer of the story doesn't really know what to do with Susan. So I think that they relegate her to damsel in distress mode.
Yeah. The thing, because she's kind of the plot for the Doctor and Barbary and Ian is we are just trying to get Susan or free Susan or find Susan so we can go home.
Right. The Reign of Terror, Part 5, A Bargain of Necessity. Written by Dennis Spooner, directed by Henrik Hirsch, produced by Verity Lambert, air date 5th of September, 1964. At the prison, Lemaitre overhears Barbara whisper the address of Jules' safe house to the Doctor during his fake interrogation. Once Lemaitre has gone, the Doctor convinces the jailer that the only way to get information about the Counter-Revolution's protection ring is to allow Barbara to walk free and follow her to her rebel alliances. The jailer agrees, but when the Doctor attempts to trick the jailer again for Susan's sake, he fails. Instead, he works out an alternate escape plan that involves Susan pretending to escape and the Doctor hitting the jailer over the head when he investigates her cell. But as they escape, they are confronted by Lemaitre, who reveals to the Doctor that he has been made aware of his duplicity and forces him to accompany Lemaitre to the safe house by threatening Susan's life. Meanwhile, Jules goes in search of Leon at the church, where he set the meeting between Ian and Leon, where he finds Ian being held captive. Realizing Leon must be the spy, Jules kills him and helps Ian escape. Together, they return to the safe house and are surprised to see Barbara, who has escaped prison, and informs them that a doctor has infiltrated the prison and released her. Ian is overjoyed that this mess might be over soon, but Barbara is very upset to learn that Leon was the spy and has been killed. Barbara, Ian, and Jules are waiting anxiously for the doctor, but are shocked when he finally arrives, not with Susan in tow, but with Lemaitre. Has the doctor betrayed them? Leon wants to question Ian. He wants to get information about the protection ring. That Lemaitre, no, not Lemaitre. I mean, sort of Lemaitre, but the other guys. They're all this. It's all Jules.
Yes, Jules and Jean.
Yeah, Jules and Jean are in charge of this like protection ring with the safe houses and all of that. But Ian doesn't know anything because he's not from around here. And
he's like, "You don't tell me the truth," and then Ian's like, "Really? You want me to tell you the truth?" Okay.
And then
1963. I came out of a box.
Yeah. And then Jules finds Ian and like kills everybody, including Leon, and saves Ian, and comes back.
I like the part where Ian's manacled. He's like shackled, but he's able to like do a double kick on a dude's back.
Yeah,
he's like an action hero.
He is.
Yeah, I love it when they do this with him.
Yeah, it's pretty great. But yeah, so he kills his captors and they escape, and then they go and they tell Barbara what happened, and Barbara's like really upset that they killed Leon. Because
Leon was the hot one she was talking to.
Yeah, she was like, I was gonna bone down with him, man. He was French. So, meanwhile, the doctor. So the only reason that they're able to tell Barbara is because the doctor convinces the jailer to like let Barbara go, and she'll be like, yeah. And then, we just follow her because she'll go back to like the safe house, and we'll be able to find the safe house and, tell the old French government where all this business is taken care of. And he's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Let's let her go and we'll follow her. Yeah. But then like no one follows her. So she just goes. And then the doctor's like, hey, so where did Barbara end up going? And he's like, what? I thought you were following her. And he's like, no, I thought you were following her. He's like, well, we better let Susan go too and try to do the same thing.
Just makes a series of high deception rolls against this guy.
Yeah. But the jailer is always like, he's a real fool me once.
Yes.
Type
fair
guy.
Enough.
Yeah. He never falls for the same trick twice, but the doctor always tries it twice every time.
He never falls for the he never falls for the same trick twice, but he will always fall for a new trick.
Yes. 100%. So then the doctor executes an escape plan for Susan, where he has Susan like hide behind the door so that you can't see her through the window.
Yep.
And then says, oh my God, she's escaped. And the jailer comes running in, and then he bashes him over the head. And it's like, all right, let's get out of here.
God.
Classic doctor.
Oh,
doctor.
Man. Do you think, I don't know offhand, but do you think the doctor has ever used this technique to get somebody out of jail? Like again over the course of the show? It feels like something I've seen before.
There's not. Please.
This feels like something Pertwee would do, but
Yes.
instead of like using a bottle, it's just the Venusian Aikido. Like he just chops him in the back of the neck.
Right.
I was just about to say I think 1 and 3 are like the only doctors that I can imagine like knocking a dude out or punching someone in the face. Like I can't really picture a lot of them being violent.
Yeah. 2 might like avoid somebody fighting him and then get them to like accidentally like knock themselves out. Like he could do something like that and be like, oh dear, oh well.
Have we watched the Fourth Doctor story where he like twists a guy's neck yet? I don't remember what story that's in, but I know it's 4.
Yeah,
MacGruber rips a dude's throat
yeah,
out.
no, I don't think
it
we're.
looks like he like snaps his neck.
Yeah, I don't think we're quite there. I think that's.
Is that Seeds of Death?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay,
It might be.
okay. I know it's 4, and I know he's running across like a manor yard because he like snaps a guy's neck and is just like, oops, he's gonna be asleep, and then just keeps going.
Yes, asleep forever.
That was canonically his first murder.
Oh man. So anyway, the Doctor and Susan, they're like on their way out, and they bump into Lemaitre, who forces the Doctor to
Yes.
take them to the safe house.
And then and then we get this scene that I enjoyed because it was a little bit. I can't remember another scene like this where Ian is very like, well, he got what he deserved. He was a mole. He was a traitor. And Barbara's like, listen to yourself, dude. Like, the other side, he's a patriot. Like, this is just a circle. It's the reign of terror, Ian.
Yeah.
Like, what? Why are you taking sides during the reign of terror? And he's like, I don't know. I want to go home. I think it's Barbara. I think it is Barbara that says like, I'm so sick of death.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a cool line for like your season finale.
Yeah.
Because this hasn't been like an overtly violent season, but I'm sure if we go back through this first season, there's been like a few fatalities at Barbara's scene.
Yeah. Didn't they witness like the first murder in like the caveman episode?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, and then like the Daleks.
That does something to you.
Yeah. They like invented murder.
Yeah.
And then the Daleks, I mean, they kill all kinds of people. And then they killed the Dalek,
then,
remember?
Right.
Yeah. So
And I guess like a lot of people died in like the Sensorites last time. I don't remember, but
I'd be sick of death
like
too.
Safest.
yeah.
And then they're interrupted by the Doctor, right?
Yeah, and the cliffhanger is like, the Doctor betrayer? What?
Dun dun dun.
Oh my God.
Tune in next Saturday.
The Reign of Terror, Part 6. Prisoners of Conciergerie. Written by Dennis Spooner. Directed by Henrik Hirsch. Produced by Verity Lambert. Air date 12th of September, 1964. Lemaitre reveals that he has been orchestrating the release and recapture of the Doctor's companions since the beginning. When Ian questions why he would do this, Lemaitre reveals he is, in fact, James Stirling. Stirling was placed deep undercover and was supposed to intercept Webster at the prison, but he was too late. Ian relays Webster's message that Stirling should return to England immediately. The spy agrees, but presses Ian for more details on Webster's last hours. Initially, Ian can't remember any details, but when Stirling begins to talk about the fact that he was called to follow Barris for Robespierre, Ian recalls the words Barris, meeting, and the sinking ship. Stirling recalls that this is the name of an inn, and they realize that this is where the conspiracy against the first deputy will take place. It is decided that Jules, Ian, and Barbara will be placed there undercover in order to gain information from the meeting. Jules, disguised as a guest, and Ian and Barbara, disguised as landlord and serving woman, are undercover at the inn. When Barris appears, he seems unsure at first, but soon warms to the place. Eventually, a young man enters who turns out to be Napoleon Bonaparte. Barris seeks to persuade the young general to take the mantle of leadership after the overthrow of Robespierre. Napoleon urges Barris to topple Robespierre, but warns him that if this fails to happen, he will deny this meeting ever took place. While this is happening, the Doctor reaches the prison where he convinces the jailer that Lemaitre has been captured as a traitor and that the jailer is an associate of his and will soon be thrown into prison himself. However, he says that he will be lenient if the jailer clears the prison in preparation for the huge influx of traitors that will obviously be brought in, ensuring that Susan is freed. As the Doctor and Susan make their escape, Robespierre is brought in as a prisoner. The coup against him has been successful, his rule has ended, and soon he will be guillotined himself. After saying their goodbyes, the Doctor and his companions return to the TARDIS in the woods near Paris, reflecting on another brush with history and their role within it. And then number 6 starts with Lemaitre revealing that he is in fact James Stirling and has arranged the release and recapture of them since episode 1.
Yes. He's at one point he tells Ian he was the one who left the keys in the door for Ian to find.
Right.
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah. He was the architect of their pain.
And their and their liberation.
Yes.
Or liberation. And then the Doctor or Ian tries to remember like what the dying Englishman in the cell said, and he was like, a bunch of just stupid stuff. I wasn't listening. And at one point it's like, oh yeah, he said like this name and the sinking ship, or I guess the sinking ship. And
right.
It's like, oh, that's a bar everyone goes to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow they disguise themselves as innkeepers at this bar.
Well, they knock out the innkeeper.
Oh, right.
And lock them in the basement.
Right. And then they get to play dress up. Ian and Barbara.
Oh, did either of you were you entertained or impressed by the reveal of who
the Napoleon reveal?
Oh, that was insane. That was crazy. I meant the who James Stirling turned out to be.
Oh. Not really.
Did it barely register like who that was?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't do much for me. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense that you were like orchestrating them getting captured and released and captured again. Like, I don't know why you did that.
But yeah, the Napoleon reveal was great.
I think it is really telling that Ian appears to be like a Napoleon super fan, because not only does he recognize Napoleon's face
on sight,
he like sees him and he's like, that's Napoleon. But also like later he's just like, I wish I could have told Napoleon about all the things that he could avoid. And I'm like, are you on Napoleon's side?
Was that
you think Napoleon is the good guy in this situation?
Was that a type of guy in the 60s?
I don't know. But he was like revved up for Napoleon.
We learned two important things about Barbara and Ian. Barbara's a communist, and Ian is a military fascist.
Yeah.
Can I make it any more obvious? This is interesting to me. The Doctor is so like, whatever, it's their problem. Let them shit in their own bed. I don't care. Let's get out of here. Like, knowing that in the future the Doctor does kind of take more of like a moral responsibility to be either one way or the other, because yeah, they do vacillate, but the Doctor's like passivity in this one was just like kind of like, oh wow, he's just like ready to bounce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so this meeting between Barris and Napoleon is about how Barris is like, hey, Napoleon, I know you've never thought about leading before, but maybe like you should lead France. That would be cool, right? And Napoleon's like, Napoleon Bonaparte, leader of France.
I like the
has a
sound
nice
of that.
ring to it. Yeah, I like the sound of that. It's just...
I liked how multiple people were like, Napoleon, that little nerd, he's going to rule France? Like, get out of here.
Yeah.
No one likes him.
I kind of wish the story had more of the silly, like, espionage stuff, like that Barbara and Ian are doing.
Yes.
For sure. It's a shame that
instead
they're...
It's just like...
Oh, no, please.
Oh, instead it's just like running back and forth from the prison and like really like wheel spinny.
Right.
Yeah, they're apart for so much of this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a side effect of like Ian taking a vacation, a 2-week
True.
vacation.
But it's kind of like you said earlier, Scott, where it is kind of just like a circle of them getting captured and recaptured and going back and forth between like 3 locations.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with Cass. I think this is probably the best episode of this, and I think it's for that reason of like there's like fun espionage, like silliness, and I wish the whole story was loaded with that. I think that would be awesome. I mean, there's a little bit more of it because you get like the doctor like pretending to be a big important man, but like. That's it. It's like you get him pretending to be a big important man, and then you get this innkeeper scene, and that's kind of it. I wish that there was like all of the machinations were like built around like espionage like set pieces. I think that would be a lot of fun. I think.
Yeah, because like there is this really cool scene. I think it might have been in the previous episode, but it's Barbara and the doctor in a jail cell together, and. They don't know that they're being spied upon because everyone is always spying on someone. And Barbara's like, look, like Ian's drank the Kool-Aid or something, but like, look, like you and me, like we got to get over on all these guys. It's like we have to get Susan. We got to get out of here. And like it would have been cool, like you said, Scott, if it had kind of played more on all the stuff they had learned and like pulling some big deception thing that kind of like brought it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Stirling reveal happens too late.
Yeah.
Because it's like if that had happened when he was talking to the doctor in like episode like the previous episode, it'd be like, oh shit, and then like like all the dominoes just start falling. But I think it just happens too late in the story.
Yeah.
This is a kind of story I would love to see pop up in the modern show going forward.
Sure.
Like a really grounded historical.
With like a lot of like espionage role play, like character stuff.
I would love to see another historical. Wait, didn't we got a purely historical, like one purely historical episode recently, right? In the 13th era?
Let's see. You mean like no paranormal, no sci-fi?
Yeah. Wasn't there one and it was like a big deal because it was like the first time in like 50 or 60 years or something like that. It was like a really long time.
I'm trying to think of like
was it the Rosa Parks one?
No, because that had like a space bounty hunter in it.
Oh right. Oh my god, you're right.
Yeah. Was it Witchfinders? Did Witchfinders have?
No, the Witchfinders ended up. You thought it was magic, but it ended up being an alien in the dirt.
Oh right,
right,
yeah. And the wedding one wasn't a historical either.
The one about the Indian and Pakistani conflict.
Is that the
I think there was also an alien.
An alien in that too? Okay.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I feel like there was one because I have like in the recesses of my mind, I remember that factoid floating around of like, oh, this was like the first purely historical episode of Doctor Who in like 50 years.
Because then
and it wasn't the Mary Shelley one because there was the
Cyberman. Yeah.
And then the one where they went back to the 70s had the Weeping Angels.
Right.
Yeah, I can't think of one. And she hasn't been in a lot of historical episodes.
Yeah. Oh no. In any event, Robespierre gets shot in the mouth.
Yep.
Which is historically accurate to the real guy who also got shot in the mouth and then guillotined. So that's
supposed to be an educational show.
Yeah. And then, you get that great scene where the doctor convinces the jailer to like clear the cells because he's like, listen, you're going to have a lot of traitors coming in here and you're going to need all the room you can get. So let's clear this out because none of these people are real prisoners anymore because there's a new man in charge and his name is Napoleon. He's like, oh, okay.
There's a part before that where he's like, he kind of gets the jailer arrested because he's like, you didn't know, you were a traitor. You were actually helping this side the whole time. And he's like, please don't, I don't want to get guillotined. And the doctor's like, let me think. And like, doctor, you're toying with a man's life.
Right?
You don't care about this conflict. Like, why are you doing this? But you think he would?
Yeah,
if this is his favorite period of history, you would think he would have like a strong opinion about one part of it.
You would think.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, there was no point at which I believed that this was the doctor's favorite. Like, he wasn't like nerding out about anything, you know? I wish he had been like a little bit more of a nerd in this. But
because I think even in Girl of the Fireplace, you get some of 10 like, oh, I know exactly what part period, you know.
Yeah. He was like really excited. Like, you know, I mean, you know, he was an excited nerd about a lot of stuff.
True.
But
the Muppet movie.
Yeah. I just can't imagine the first Doctor like being like excited about something, and like I kind of want to see that as a result. I don't know. But yeah, and then the guys in charge, they like let them be about their merry way, go back to the TARDIS, and then they're like, you know, I've got a feeling that they have no idea where they're going next, and that's why they couldn't answer my question. It's like, but at the end of the day, don't we all not know where we're going? And they're like, good point. Anyway.
See you next season.
Anyway,
maybe.
France.
See ya. Yeah.
Anyway, France.
Yeah, and then in the TARDIS, the Doctor says this whole thing about like their destiny being in the stars, and you get like
stars.
Yeah, you get to see the galaxy, and then credits.
Yeah, I think it's like our destiny's in the stars. Now let's go out and find it.
Yeah, which very much feels like.
I was wondering why it ended that way. I was wondering why it had the weird voiceover, and then I was just like, oh, it could have been the last episode of Doctor Who ever. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I had fun watching this one, but I can totally see why both of you had difficulty like getting engaged by it, or like.
I liked the last episode. I liked episode 6 a lot. It was just, and I liked moments throughout. It was just a lot of rigmarole to like get to like the fun scenes. Just so many close-ups of people talking
and shifty eyes darting about.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. So,
and like the shots of people's like middles as they were sitting down, like their waists as they were sitting down.
Right.
What was that supposed to mean?
I don't know.
Is that the best way to show
they
that
don't have
sitting
heads?
Down? That's true.
Yeah. Well, speaking of animation, next week, The Abominable Snowmen, which is actively being animated right now, but of course, in typical TDC fashion, we are covering it just before that animated version is released.
Slideshow City.
Yep, we're gonna get some slideshow stuff, some reconstructions next week, unfortunately. But yeah, in the meantime, go check out our Patreon at duelinggenre.com/support. Become a Patreon supporter. We have some. We've discussed some possibilities for Doctor Who bonus content on the Patreon. We've talked about possibly doing like the occasional right. We've done we did the March Madness bracket stuff on the main feed, and we've talked about like doing more of those, but like doing them on Patreon and things like that. So if that's something that you would be into, become a Patreon member, and then let us know that you be like, hey, I'm a Patreon member now, and I want those bracket episodes. And we'll be like, yes, sir, Mr. Patron, sir, or ma'am, or what's the sir, ma'am equivalent of they of gender they? Is there one?
I don't think there is.
Citizen.
We don't. Citizen.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, duelinggenre.com. duelinggenre.com /support. Become a Patreon citizen, and we'll make some TDC bonus content. We've also talked about watching all of Russell T Davies like shows that he's done since like he left Doctor Who, and like maybe we could do that as Patreon stuff, things like that. So Time Traveler's Wife premieres or is out now, I guess, as of you hearing this. Stephen Moffat's HBO show, so maybe we could talk about that.
Sex education. We could all finally learn how sex works.
Yeah, that's true. We'll all be educated. So anyway, duelinggenre.com /support. If any of that sounds interesting, become a Patreon member and let us know, because that's the only way that we'll know to start making that stuff. Thanks for listening. As always, we will be back next week to talk about the Abominable Snowmen, a classic episode. I think it's the introduction to the Great Intelligence, right? Isn't that?
Yes. Hey.
I think that's this.
Yes.
Yeah. So there you go. Abominable Snowmen next week. None of it exists. So listening to the episode of us talking about the episode and recapping it is going to not be that much different from just watching the reconstructions. Right. So, bye everybody.